This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Giduyot. It's Wednesday, November 6th. This is Africa 54. A look inside Nigeria's troubled Islamic reformatory schools. The latest high-tech weapon in the war on mosquitoes in Zanzibar. And Rwanda goes electric with help from Volkswagen. We begin our broadcast in Nigeria, where police said Tuesday they have freed another 259 people being held at an Islamic rehabilitation center in the southwestern city of Ibadan, adding that some complained of being beaten by their captors. This follows several raids of Islamic reformatory schools in northern Nigeria, revealing the horrific abuse being suffered by students. Loren Anthony reports.
15-year-old Bahani's body bears the scars of education. Last month he was sent to an Islamic reformatory school in northern Nigeria. 13 days later, police arrived, one of at least 7 raids over the past 6 weeks that have uncovered horrific physical and sexual abuse. Bahani is now back at home with his father, Yahaya.
I will not send him there again. Initially, we sent him to the Islamic school for rehabilitation. If you don't know what's happening in a place, you just pray for God's help.
More than 1,000 children and young adults have been freed in the raids, but Bahani and his father say they still have deep respect for the Malam, or Islamic scholar, who was in charge. He is now in police custody, charged with child cruelty. Testimony from some of the raided schools presents a grim picture of rife sexual abuse, chains and daily beatings. But many in the predominantly Muslim north tend to attribute the problems to low-level teachers rather than the revered malams, and they blame the government for failing to provide enough formal education and services for young people. Fewer than half of the children in the region attended government primary schools in 2015, the latest official figures. Islamic schools, known locally as al-Bashir schools, are far more common, enrolling an estimated 10 million students. And some malams in recent decades have offered to treat behavioural problems, including drug addiction and delinquency. Masuda Rafindadi runs an Islamic school in Katsina. He also carries scars from his time in such an institution. But he says lashings are needed to correct bad behaviour. He beats some of his 100 students, though he says he does not chain them.
It's a place where God has designed to reshape destinies. People have had great experiences. If we should talk about this, we will take the whole day. Look at me. I went there and came out a great person. It's still a shock to people.
The office of President Muhammadu Buhari, a Muslim, said in an October 19th statement that the government would not tolerate torture chambers that mistreat young people. But without more rigorous government oversight, critics warn abuses will likely continue.
Loren Anthony of Reuters with that report. Sudan's new Prime Minister Abdalla Hamdok visited the Darfur region Monday amid plans to settle a nearly 17-year-old conflict in the West Sudanese region and repair the damage done by ousted President Omar al-Bashir. Hamdok drew a crowd of hundreds as he toured Zamzam camp just outside al-Fashir. The soft-spoken civilian leader greeted them with the words freedom, peace and justice, a slogan chanted by the crowds that took to the streets across Sudan in this year's mass rallies that eventually ousted Bashir. He told the crowd they will work together and meet their demands. Hamdok took office in August under a 3-year power-sharing deal with the military. Khartoum is also taking part in peace talks with rebels from Darfur and other borderlands, but diplomats say the sides were having to wrestle with a conflict that has changed and fractured. Scientists seeking a breakthrough in the fight against malaria are using drones to spray rice fields in Zanzibar, not with traditional pesticides, but with a thin, non-toxic film. The fields are typical breeding grounds for the Anopheles mosquito, the type that transmits malaria, which the United Nations says kills a young child every minute. David Doyle reports.
A new weapon in the battle against malaria has taken to the skies. On Tanzania's Zanzibar archipelago, researchers are flying drones armed with Aquitaine AMF, a non-toxic, colourless solution. It's being sprayed on rice fields, typical breeding grounds for the Anopheles mosquito that spreads malaria. The liquid creates a thin film on top of the water, preventing mosquito pupae and larvae from breathing at the surface.
That's malaria mosquitoes, you see that?
Put simply, it drowns them. It's a method that tackles the transmission of malaria at the source, says Dr. Bart Knowles.
This is where the problem starts. These are the breeding grounds of mosquitoes. So once we control them here, we will see far fewer mosquitoes making it to the houses where people live, biting these people and therefore transmitting malarial disease.
The World Health Organization says malaria killed 435,000 of the 219 million people who were infected in 2017. Sub-Saharan Africa accounted for more than 90% of global deaths. Scientists hope to expand this technology across the continent, saying the drones are efficient and cost-effective. That's especially when dealing with large irrigated areas, says Professor Wolfgang Richard Mukabana.
As you can see, the way the paddies look like, it's very difficult to just walk through the paddies and apply the chemical. So you want to have something that can just spray it on the water surface, it spreads, does its job, and that is it.
The Aquitaine solution is made by Australian company Aquitaine Products, which says it is highly permeable to gases, meaning that while it stops the mosquitoes from breathing, it still allows the water to be oxygenated.
David Doyle of Reuters reporting. The Nigerian film The Milkmaid tells the stories of two sisters whose lives are shattered by the gender-based violence of militant insurgency. VOA's Grace Oyunobi caught up with the movie's executive producer, Seyon Sowemimo, at a World Bank screening here in Washington.
The Milkmaid is a story that is topical, given what's happening in sub-Saharan Africa and the decimation of lives that's happening with the insurgency, especially with women and the girl child.
Camera set. Action.
The story of The Milkmaid is a story of two sisters who are living their lives as milkmaids in a village, and the younger sister is in the process of getting married, and that wedding happens, but right in the middle of the wedding, they encounter an attack by extremists and get taken away from their village, relocated to the camp of the extremists. There they undergo the process of indoctrination and basically a new way of living which they are not accustomed to.
There's a physical background where we're showcasing the landscape in this part of the country, the beauty of the landscape, and we're also showcasing the cultural landscape, the color and the elegance of the Fulani culture.
Menene kike so?
Na neman yar uwata.
Menene zaki bada?
Mu kuma za mu koya miki yanda ya kamata har ki ce da mu kin gode.
Na yanke shawarin zan aurar da wannan mata.
Ba za ki bi umarni na ba. Daga mi ta daga nan.
Idan ta mutu ma, haka Allah ya so. Ki shirya kamar mace ta gari. Ina zuwa juma'a da dare.
What we don't usually have are stories behind the people involved in this crisis. What we see are the statistics, 10 people died, 15 people died, 50 people died. But we get to know nothing about these people as human beings, their lives, their loves, their desires, their hopes. So the film really aims to train a spotlight on the lives of the people caught up in the insurgency situation in the country.
The truth is, the girls are still being taken. So it's not so much bring back our girls, it's stop taking our girls.
Hukuma yadda muke da.
Ba za mu iya ba. Babu ma wanda zai iya.
That was VOA's Grace Oyenubi reporting. Here in the United States, representatives of Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan are meeting in Washington today to work out their contentious differences on the massive dam that's under construction on the Blue Nile. The $4 billion Grand Ethiopian Dam was announced in early 2011. It's the centerpiece of Ethiopia's plan to become Africa's biggest power exporter with a projected capacity of more than 6,000 megawatts. Ethiopia's current plan is to start filling the reservoir next year, a process that is expected to take 2 years. President Donald Trump offered to arrange mediation talks after several rounds of negotiations broke down. The Treasury Department is hosting the talks. Now, African Americans have long had a role in cowboy culture, even if their stories weren't often well known. That tradition continues. Arturo Martinez reports from Memphis, Tennessee.
A lot of people don't realize that there truly are black cowboys and cowgirls because you don't see them in the history books. My name's Denise Tyus. I compete in rodeo. It's a competitive event, gives you such an adrenaline rush. It's like a drugless high. It's a good thing. You're playing in the dirt, but it's good, clean fun that the whole family can do and enjoy. I've been around it just about all my life. I actually didn't start competing until I was grown, but my children have grown up around rodeo. It helped us to teach our children about responsibility, setting some goals. It was really something good that it kept them out of trouble. And then, of course, my niece. She's just been coming over and riding, and I try to give her a few pointers. This weekend, the Bill Pickett Invitational Rodeo is going to Memphis, Tennessee. Is just an event that portrays the cowboy and cowgirl from the African American community.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to see your cowboys and cowgirls on Saturday night?
Here in a minute, we're going to do some more ladies steering decorating. I also do an event called barrel racing. You run a cloverleaf pattern. It's a speed event. You have to leave all three of the barrels standing because you can hit it as long as it stays standing. But if you knock it over, then it's a 5-second penalty.
Come on now. Go, go!
Oh, man. Didn't go as well as planned. Actually mowed the second barrel down, so therefore I got a 5-second penalty. So no purse, no winnings today.
Oh, it went pretty well, you know, got the win in the steer wrestling, and finally, you know, everything come together, horses worked good, got a good steer, and it's actually my full-time job now, so it's a hard way to make a living, but I love it, so I can't think of anything else I'd rather do.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, combining development with carbon reduction in Rwanda. We'll be right back.
We're talking about the news and issues you're talking about, sharing stories of development and growth across Africa, around the world, and in our lives. Topics that inform, empower, and change the rules. It's time for Our Voices with me, Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick,
and Hadiza Kiari,
and Ayan Bior,
and Orion Itangi Shaka.
It's time for Our Voices.
Could be French,
English,
but Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
I am Sheikh Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. Renowned British Nigerian artist Yinka Shinobari has launched a residency program in Lagos to raise the profile of African art on the global scene. Launched in conjunction with the annual Art X Fair, the course will bring together painters, sculptors, and other creatives from around the world. 4 groups of 3 artists will spend 3 months every year living and working together at sites in Lagos and on a 30-acre farm in a town outside the city. There's been a surge in global interest in African art over the last decade. Experts say, while Nigeria and South Africa currently dominate the African art industry, collectors are also showing interest in works from Kenya, Angola, Morocco, and Senegal. Next up, women and girls suffering from cancer dazzled dozens on a Tunis catwalk with their colorful dresses and fitted tunics in an event organized to battle misconceptions about the illness. The event was organized with the aim of boosting the patient's confidence and raising morale. Organizers also aim to raise awareness about the illness, which, according to a report by the Tunisian Health Ministry, is the cause of about 10,800 deaths in the country. It lists cancer as the second major cause of death, with 1,500 women diagnosed with breast cancer each year. And finally, plastic waste litters the streets of the coastal city of Abidjan in Ivory Coast. From bags to bottles, some 13 million tons of plastic flows into the oceans every year, according to a UN report in 2018. Now an innovative plastic recycling scheme is transforming waste into something more constructive, buildings. Last spring, the Sakasu School in western Ivory Coast was destroyed by a storm. The building has been recently reconstructed thanks to UNICEF. The project is first in the country to use bricks made from plastic waste. And that's what's trending today.
Recent headlines have highlighted ways in which foreign donations can enter America's political system. But advocacy groups say stopping the flow of foreign money has been hampered by legal loopholes, illicit financial maneuvers, and ultimately a lack of political resolve. VOA's Brian Padden reports that Republicans and Democrats both strongly oppose foreign interference in American elections, but both parties have also reportedly received foreign donations.
Untold amounts of foreign money are secretly flowing into America's political bloodstream.
The danger to democracy of foreign money in U.S. elections is that it's really a fundamental attack on American democracy in self-governance.
Recently, prosecutors charged associates of President Donald Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, with funneling $1 million in foreign money from an unidentified Russian businessman to U.S. candidates. The criminal charges arose amid a congressional impeachment inquiry of the president for allegedly pressuring Ukraine to investigate Trump's political rival, Joe Biden. 2 of the men, Ukrainian-born Lev Parnas and Belarus-born Igor Fruman, allegedly worked with Giuliani on this effort to pressure Ukraine as well. Meanwhile, an American political operative pled guilty to illegally funneling money from a Saudi tycoon to President Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign. To stem the flow of foreign money, transparency advocates are calling for an end to legal but hidden donations to political action groups like the National Rifle Association. The NRA admitted last year it accepted donations from Russia, but said they only used domestic funds in U.S. election spending.
The more of this information that's sort of hidden behind closed doors, the less accountability we're going to have in U.S. politics, and the greater the opportunities become for foreign money and foreign influence to sneak in and affect U.S. elections.
But forcing the disclosure of donors to groups that advocate politically would do more harm than good, say privacy defenders.
We have documented evidence of people, being fired from their jobs, or companies not really wanting to fire them, but feeling they had to because they were being boycotted or harassed. We have evidence of people being, in some cases, physically attacked.
The 2010 Citizens United Supreme Court decision that unleashed unlimited spending by nonprofit organizations divides transparency and privacy advocates. But both sides agree more could be done to crack down on foreign nationals illicitly channeling contributions through American shell companies and other means. Brian Patton, VOA News, Washington.
President Donald Trump sent a low-ranking delegation to important summits with Southeast Asian leaders this week, triggering concerns about Washington's commitment to the region as a strategic partner. White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara has the story.
On the world stage, showing up matters. At this week's East Asia and ASEAN summits, President Trump did not attend, nor did he send his Vice President or Secretary of State. Adhering to diplomatic protocol, Southeast Asian leaders did not show up for the U.S.-ASEAN meeting either, sending their foreign ministers to meet National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien, Trump's special envoy for the summits.
As he said in his letter, President Trump wants to assure you of the rock-solid American commitment in word and deed to our friends, allies, and partners in ASEAN.
O'Brien extended Trump's invitation to Southeast Asian leaders to a summit in the U.S. early next year.
I'm sure they'll take the invitation seriously. There is an interest in the United States being more deeply engaged and for making a joint trip to the United States.
Until then, critics say Washington's viewpoint is missing on regional negotiations, including on free trade, where China is dominating. A new economic agreement initiated by Beijing is underway at the summit. The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, is expected to launch next year. It will account for a third of global gross domestic product and nearly half the world's population.
It definitely will play a crucial role in promoting regional economic integration and cooperation across the board, especially on trade and investment.
Another multilateral deal, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, is also moving along without Washington. The Trump administration prefers bilateral trade agreements, but has not yet struck any in the region.
Japan has really slow-walked the bilateral trade negotiations as much as they can. Vietnam, who seemed to be a possibility, is just not interested. The Philippines is not interested. They look at how the United States has treated its closest allies and partners, Canada, Mexico, Europe, Korea, and they don't want anything to do with it.
Meanwhile, the trade war between the U.S. and China continues to worry ASEAN leaders, with some expressing their opinion more strongly than others.
America allows only 2 terms for each president. So at the very worst, this is going to go on for another 5 years, if he wins.
Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News, White House.
It's time for our tech segment, and joining us now is our technology reporter, Paul Dihopo.
Hello, Esther. Rwanda's government is getting behind the carbon neutral movement promoting electric cars and motorcycles. The German automaker Volkswagen is showcasing electric vehicles in Kigali, while a local company has been selling electric bikes. But is this viable? Ruda Elmendor has a report.
It looked like an easy ride Tuesday for Rwandan Prime Minister Edouard Girente as he maneuvered an electric car assembled by Volkswagen in Kigali. Volkswagen has rolled out 4 electric cars, which Kigali residents can try out through the Uber-like Move service. If all goes well, the automaker will introduce another 50 electric cars to be powered by 15 charging stations. During the launch, Girente said electric cars would be a step forward in Rwanda's drive to become less dependent on carbon-emitting fossil fuels.
Rwandans are becoming increasingly aware that protecting the environment is a top priority.
Arrival of the e-cars follows the introduction of electric motorcycles in Rwanda. Because of a poor road system and dense population, 70% of Kigali's residents rely on motorbikes for public transport. Kigali-based Ampersand is one of the companies hoping to see the public switch to electric-powered bikes. They are manufactured partly in India, partly in Rwanda, and cost around $1,500. CEO Josh Whale explains the popularity.
The motorcycles are simply cheaper to acquire and cheaper to operate, but actually have more power and more performance than the current petrol motorcycles used.
The e-bikes use a battery that has to be charged every hour or so and lasts for 75 kilometers. Despite the limitations, the riders using them say they are happy.
I love the electric bike because it's good. It requires little maintenance, and I am making more money than with the fuel motorbike.
Battery life is one of the challenges for Ampersand. They're working on increasing the capacity and having more than the current 2 charging stations. The Ministry of Infrastructure is monitoring the progress with the e-bikes. If found suitable, it will start promoting them, says Ministry official Alfred Biringiro.
After realizing that electric motorcycle is can be used on our terrain, which is a hilly terrain, we just sensitize people on advantages of using electric bikes and electric motorcycles.
Ampersand hopes to have 500 e-bikes on the road next year, but they might feel competition from the electric cars, according to Volkswagen Sub-Saharan Africa CEO Thomas Schaefer.
People are tired of sitting on the back of a motorbike and having a bad helmet here. So there's this, and it rains and the buses are sometimes full, so the take-up is amazing. Yeah?
While for now motorcycles remain king of the road in Rwanda, e-cars and e-bikes are gaining ground and may lead the country to an electric, carbon-neutral future. Ruud Almendorp for VOA News, Kigali, Rwanda.
That's today's Tech Report. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you so much, Paul. Be sure to join Paul Diho each Wednesday for another tech segment right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Good night from Washington.
Thank you.